Welcome to Generation Movie on the beginning of November, but we continue our spooky season look at Hammer horror films. As always, my name is JW Colwell. I am joined by my co-host and good movie-loving friend, Rich Drees. How are you doing, Rich?
I'm doing great.
So
busy season. I'm starting to do a little catch-up on stuff that I missed throughout the year for my end-of-the-year voting. I watched a great animated film earlier tonight that's on Netflix, Nimona.
Nimona's going to be Nimona's going to be a buzz movie. There's a lot of good in it.
That one, if you haven't.
And also it's something that Disney kind of dropped the ball on. Point blank. They didn't know what they had. They didn't understand it. And they kind of just like, we'll let that one go. And Netflix kind of scooped it up. And I think it's going to be in the race for best animated feature. I really do.
I mean, it's obvious Wish is most likely going to when that comes out later on this month. That's the Pixar film. Across the Spider-Verse, very much so. And maybe even Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
I mean, it's going to be very competitive.
In terms of the actual production value, things that they were doing with the animation and stuff like that. Story's a little simplistic, but I watched that this weekend, so I really like that. So
you watched Mutant Mayhem or Nimona?
I watched Mutant Mayhem on Sunday, and then Nimona.
I gotta say, Mutant Mayhem's a blast, man. It's not the greatest animated movie ever made, but it's fun and it gets the turtles right.
I like the production design, how it looks like it's sketches, almost like in a board,
like it's out of a book.
School's pre-algebra notebook, and he's bored and he's just drawing the turtles and cars and stuff like that. I really like that. So
we had a great week. I taking the week off. I watched my football team lose on Monday, and then we did trick-or-treating on Halloween night. And down here in Florida, there was an area where it's house after house after house. And everything is like, there was a Wonka themed house. There was a caveman themed house. There was a Gotham themed house with a giant Joker. Like it was like old timey Halloween. And it was really
so in Florida is Halloween more of a still doing the trick or treat thing, because up here in Northeast PA they've been doing a lot of like the trunk or treat, events during the day.
There are trunk or treats down here, right? There, it's obviously the most aggressive thing is the trunk or treats, and there are a lot of churches, so there are a lot of trunk or treats. But this particular area is like out of a time capsule, and that's how I put it up on my Facebook wall. I was just like, it was like being in NEPA in the 1980s. Like it was like every house was lit, every house had people. People were sitting out front with tables, and you would like the kids were getting in lines to go to the candy. Like it was it was insane. And it's one little area, and it's all these houses that band together and have like a giant Halloween. And you could literally go, I think we did like 15 blocks, and we had two full buckets. So I mean,
Nice.
and we have little guys, and they just, the little nephews, like they tap out early, and it's not like it used to be for us, where it's like, I'll be home at 11. You know what I mean? Like running up and down streets, like, that street looks lit, let's go there. It's not like, but it was fun, and it was like the coolest costume I saw, Rich. I'm gonna do a shout out, because I want to make sure I get this. I don't know the kid. I don't know who it was, but he looked 15 or 16, or like actually 13, 14, 15, in that range. And I want to get a picture of it, and I'll save it really quick, because I should have done it, because I wanted to talk about it really quick. Basically he did a full on Inspector Gadget. It was
nice.
And it was like he had the outfit right, he had the hat right, he had the like it was amazing. And it was like one of those costumes where it's like he didn't look old enough to know what Inspector Gadget is. Like it was like one of the things where it's like I was looking at it going, how did you come up with that, kid? Like that's pretty amazing.
Is it even a case where he saw like the live action movies?
I don't think he's that. I don't think he was that old enough. Like but it was. I can't get it to say it. I'm son of a bitch. Hold on. But it was like, it was one of those things where it was like, I looked at it, and I looked at my wife, and my wife's like, that's a really good costume. I'm like, that is a good costume. Like, I have, and it doesn't, and actually, he actually looked like, for me, he looked more like the television, the cartoon. Here it is. I got it. I found it. I found a way to save it. Should have done more prep before the show, but look at this costume, Rich. He has the hands, he has the proper brown gloves, he has the blue pants, and look at the thing coming out of his hat.
Nice work.
It really was amazing. And but like I said, it was fun. We had a good time with the boys. It was perfectly acceptable and fun and amazing Halloween. Let's get to some comments. Also, if you're here and watching the show tonight, by all means, like and subscribe. As we get into this, we have our YouTube channel for Generation Movie. We will also, and I know this is not a shock to you, but we will also have the YouTube channel and everything going for Loud and Nerdy, which of course starts on the Indie Escape Network tomorrow night. Look at that. There's the pretty, starting November 7th. So
great
by
work,
all means,
our graphic guy Joe. Always wonderful work.
Oh yeah, Joe is a beast. Joe's an absolute monster when it comes to that shit. He's amazing. And then, but like and subscribe, and then also like and subscribe all our other stuff. And I am told we have a guest tonight. Really quick before we get the comments. Is she ready?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'd say
let's run through the comments
first. Yeah,
there are a lot of
she doesn't appear ready, but we have a guest. I'm excited about the guest. Ken McKernan says, "Good evening, friends." Good evening, Ken. Hope you had a great Halloween. Joe says, "Good evening, gentlemen. Hope you guys had an awesome Halloween." I did. It was really fun. I had a lot of good times going with the kids. The kids were upset with me though. They're like, "You should stay in," because I usually hand out candy, and I went with them, and I'm like, I never want to not go with them again. For some of us, spooky season is all year. Very true, but we'll talk more as we progress to the show. Rich and I have set down some guidelines about like the rest of the year. We have 6 episodes left, in case you can count them on 2 hands. How many episodes we have left in 2023?
Unless you got a really freaking mutant hand, that is.
Yeah, that was, well, yeah. Well, it could have been one hand if I had an extra finger. Michael Patty says, "Hello, lads. I like that
Hey, Mike.
it makes us sound young and vivacious. Amber says, "Hi guys, hi Amber, Abram, I should say, not Amber. Sorry, just guessing." Rich growing his hair out. Maybe I'm also doing. You can't tell. I'm doing the no shave November thing. It's gonna be a mess in about 3 weeks. Right as I'm ready to shave it for November, or at the end of November. But right now, you can barely see
it. It's more of a case of I just haven't had a chance to get to my barber, who's a movie guy. I love my barber. You would love him. From day after Thanksgiving through Christmas Eve, the only movie he runs in his shop is A Christmas Story. He loves A Christmas Story. He's been out to the house in Cleveland and done the overnight there and everything.
On a loop, huh? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And speaking of pretty amazing, we have a guest joining us tonight, which is we don't always have guests because sometimes they get in the way of of us just droning on about stuff. Why have a guest when Rich and I can just hear ourselves talk for an hour? But she is also like this is something that's coming. This is 2024 is quickly approaching. She is also someone that's going to join us for a series of episodes at the beginning of 2024 that we're planning out as we speak with our 6 last episodes, and then we're going to take a couple weeks off and gear up for 2024. Also, I have to gear up for my 50th birthday, so please just give me a break about the end of the year. But I'd like to welcome. You want to welcome her? You can welcome her. You want to welcome her?
You go ahead. I talk to her every day.
Natasha Bagutsky, look at her. Like, shit. What is? That's amazing. It's incredible. I am woman. Hear me roar.
Hi guys.
Still watching that other Taylor Swift concert on Netflix?
Hi, Natasha.
Hold on,
How are you doing? Did we disturb your dance party in the USA?
Yo, I was singing into my singing in my remote like it was a goddamn microphone.
Well, there you go.
I don't understand how she does this for 3 hours. I could barely do it for 5 minutes.
Well, she's not
her
human.
cardio's insane.
She's made a blood oath with Satan.
Yeah. And if you want to hear more of Natasha's and my adventures in going to see the Eras tour in a theater, check out our podcast. I'll plug it again at the end of the episode. But it's the Big Picture Podcast.
Again, I don't have the capabilities of going with Natasha because I'm in Florida. I haven't been able to go. Also, I just feel it's something where I could probably get arrested. So anyway, Natasha.
No, you won't. Trust me. No, there is no animosity at all at that concert.
Okay. But I feel like a 50-year-old guy going by himself is going to be a little creepy. Anyway.
No, it's not.
Natasha, you don't think that's a little creepy?
No.
Rich, help me out. Tell her.
It's not as bad. Actually, dude, I'm going to be on her side on this. Now, if you had gone to see Spice World by yourself or with just one friend, that was creepy.
Just one friend. That sounds weird.
But honestly,
okay.
That's not the same feeling that you get.
Natasha,
we're not here.
Why are you here tonight?
Yeah, I'm here to talk about Monster Squad. I finally watched the damn thing.
Did you?
I did last night.
Did you like the Monster Squad, Natasha?
Oh,
what?
Ow.
And it is not aged well at all. There is a good thing that I actually did like about it.
Oh, just one. Go ahead.
Really, only just like one or two, but they kind of link. I like the dialogue.
Can't imagine the comments.
At least in the first half of the film, the relationship that the Dell, the father, has with his son.
Mm-hmm.
Great conversation. I like the idea that he treats him sort of as a grown up. It's like, dude, you're still a kid. Like the fact I'm telling you we're going to see a marriage counselor, just consider that your win.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't I just want to throw some stuff at you. You didn't like Phoebe the Phoebe. You didn't like this version of Frankenstein, which is actually one of the coolest versions of Frankenstein. Or you didn't like Dracula. This Dracula.
No, I hated Dracula. Every time he was on screen, I was just like,
really?
Oh, I was gritting my teeth. It was so horrible for me. The Mummy was pretty cool. Frankenstein, I like how they really harked back to Boris Karloff. I like that they added Creature from the Black Lagoon. He's actually my favorite Universal monster.
He's an underrated Universal monster.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so you didn't like
I
the
know
monster.
It's a creature, not actually Frankenstein. They actually addressed that in the film. Is Frankenstein the monster or the man who created him? And you got it right by saying it was the man. I like the.
He's a bit of a monster, though, as a human being.
I like the interaction with the kids in the beginning, but it seemed like once the monsters showed up and the action started happening, we lost that. Honest, I could have taken an entire movie of just the kids, maybe even just discovering that monsters were real, and never see the fucking monsters. Once the monsters got involved, you lost me. It just went.
Wow. Let's go to the comments.
Sorry, Joe.
Oh, that's it. She's dead to me. Joe started out well. It was good evening, Natasha. And then Ken wrote Natasha with an exclamation point. Laugh out loud from Michael. Bonsoir from Michael.
Bonsoir, monsieur.
Ça va? Was it actually a Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster? It's Frankenstein's monster. But it's a really good performance. It's Tom Noonan. It's a really good performance.
I think Ken though has a point there right at the end.
I think Monster Squad is a movie that needs to be first watched as a teen. That's fair. I think you can poke it apart as you get older, but I think I think this is one of the things I would say to Rich and Natasha. The thing about the Monster Squad that has endured for me is that it's like the cursing cousin you have to the Goonies. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the cousin you have.
Like Goonies.
Yeah, she doesn't like Goonies. I know that. So I sort of had a suspicion that the Goonies meet the Universal monsters might be a sledding uphill here.
What? So wait a second. You don't like the Goonies either?
It's a classic. I'll give it that.
Okay, I'll bring it back. Anyway,
like, so many good things about it.
Still talking.
I'm hanging up.
Don't hang up. Okay, so you don't like the Goonies and you don't like the Monster Squad. Okay.
Goonies has aged better than Monster Squad did, though. I'll give it that.
Well, I think part of the allure of the Monster Squad for me is that it's a little bit harder edge than the Goonies is.
It's a little more B-rated.
Yeah, it's a little more. It's a little, it has good cursing in it. It has a whole side thing where they're trying to explain a version to a 6-year-old. You know what I mean? Like it's
that drove me absolutely bonkers because all those kids are fucking virgins, but of course it had to be a girl because we needed to give a girl something to do. Can we also talk about how they blew up the only minority character in the movie after making him stupid for the entire film?
Wait, what are you talking? Wait, who's the minority character?
Our token black guy, the black detective.
Oh well, but they were blowing everybody up. That was the whole thing was that
he's the only actual major death outside the werewolf.
Okay. I never really did it as a quota movie. Like I'm surprised.
When it's really the only death in the movie, it's kind of hard to miss.
The mummy dies. The
mummy's a monster, not a man.
The cheerleaders
he was man once.
The cheerleaders died to become the brides.
Wow, we don't even know their names. Again, they're just there.
They're nameless,
They're
faceless
not
cheerleaders.
characters, really. They just show up and they're disposed of immediately. They're not
Yes,
actual
that's
characters that you get to know. The only character that we got to know who died happened to be the token black guy. But the virgin thing, that drove me absolutely nuts. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, of course, it had to be a woman who was the virgin, who read the book instead of one of the 5 male kids that we had who all haven't dipped their wink and been donked yet. Because that didn't come into play. Male virgins really didn't come into play in horror films, particularly teen horror films, until Hocus Pocus.
well, and I think so. Wait a second. That's a very interesting thing. So you like Hocus Pocus, but not the Monster Squad
because it subverts that idea that a virgin can only be a woman.
Okay.
But it was the 80s.
I never looked at her as a virgin. I just looked at her as Phoebe the Phoebe. I thought it's a great kid performance. Have you heard the story?
She's great. She's great.
Has Rich told you the story about the little girl, the actress?
No.
So I'm going to tell you this story really quick, and then we got to get to the 7 Golden Dragons. Also, you hate the Monster Squad, and I'm mad at you. But anyway,
Ken's got a point. They are geared towards.
You also don't like the Goonies, which I don't understand.
Did you just see Ken's comment that solves everything?
We'll get to Ken's comment in a moment. So let me tell you the quick Phoebe the Phoebe story. So the little girl who was an actress, basically her parents introduced him to the actor playing Dracula, by the way. And they had a great little meeting before, this is the guy that's playing Dracula. They're gonna have a rig, and he's gonna pick you up, and he's gonna say a nasty word to you and all that other stuff. Great. So the little girl's met him. Everything's fine. They get to the scene. The scene is real, and one of the most real things you'll ever see from an actor screaming in her life, because they didn't show the little girl the contacts, and they didn't show the little girl the fangs. And so that scream from Phoebe is the blood-curdling scream is a real element. She was really scared and really terrified. Borderline child abuse, which is one of the reasons I love the film even more. It's just what it is.
Whoa!
It's just because it's funny that you would do that, and what people were able to get away with in the 80s, like not telling the kid that she was going to have fangs and the red eyes, and it's just like that was just chalked up to it. What a great performance by that kid. And then you hear the story, and you're like, oh my God, what were we doing in the 80s? And then you realize, that Rich, did you get hit with a belt in the 80s? Did you get hit with a belt as a kid? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
maybe once or twice.
I was in the 90s.
Maybe lots of times.
Okay, and then there were times when I wasn't on a date.
Okay, so
I did not want that image in my head.
To be honest, Ken is defending you. To be honest, Goonies and Monster Squad is more geared toward the male side of the population.
I was giving him credit for that. Thank you, Ken.
I think this may be a missed opportunity for an entire Monster Squad show. Yeah, you know what?
No,
I want because there were definitely fans in your group of the Monster Squad.
Yes, there were, and can we?
But she decided to no longer be friends with them.
That is not true. But can we also take a guess over what side of the XY chromosome they landed on?
I'm a movie guy. I don't understand is it X guys or X guys? X are guys, right? Why? I'm really dumb. I'm not a science person. That's not true. I know exactly. I know what you're saying.
Male.
Natasha, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I got you.
There isn't enough in here to make me care.
Wow.
I actually kind of like the dialogue though with the kids. It had a little bit of the vibe I got from watching It Chapter 1. If It Chapter 1 took that and
it has a lot. I would say the DNA of Monster Squad is very, very apparent in It Chapter 1 with the kids. Yes. I would agree. Okay, I'm disappointed, but it is what it is. Are you still thinking about coming back and joining us for a series of shows documenting female directors and whatnot. Should we discuss
Yes.
that now really quick before we get going?
Yes, I am.
On our 7 Golden Vampires. Okay. So we have a series of shows that we're going to be doing with Natasha, and I'm glad she came back tonight and said she hated the Monster Squad.
This is the payback for Porky's, guys.
Wow.
No,
Yeah,
we
this-
said
so-
on air that I would get to
Yeah.
pick a round of films,
Mhm.
and here it comes.
Yes, and we're gonna do some women centric female directed films, and we're super excited about it. I think it's a wonderful place to do and celebrate women directors, as women directors get more of a hold on the world, and because it's actually happening a lot. A lot of the biggest box office hits this year are directed by females, so we should be embracing and just going crazy with that. But we'll announce that later on. Rich and I have to get through the rest of our November and December schedules, and then we will be talking about Natasha come January. So you'll hear more about her and what films we're going to be watching on Generation Movie, and encouraging people to watch and join with us. But thank you for joining us tonight and ruining my childhood. I appreciate it. You're
Thank
like
you
George
for
Lucas.
having me at any time.
You're
Joe,
like George Lucas, Phantom Menace.
I love Phantom
just
Menace.
continue to destroy my childhood. I hate the Goonies and the Monster Squad. Next thing you're gonna say is like I hate Gremlins, or I hate Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie, or
It is not a Christmas movie. I've had this fight a million times with Rick.
Oh, jeez! Put her back up. Come on. I told him to put you back up.
Okay, so
I saw.
so let me just I'm gonna blow your mind with why it is a Christmas movie. I don't need any of the other stuff. What is he in the airport to do? He's in an airport at the beginning of the movie when he gets picked up by
Argyle.
the car guy, by Argyle, right? What is he there to do?
To see his wife.
And kids.
Yeah.
Does he have a gift with him?
I don't remember.
He does. He has a giant bear. A giant teddy bear for his daughter. Okay. So he has a Christmas gift and he's traveling on a holiday to visit his family across the country.
That doesn't constitute a Christmas movie. But okay. How about this? Bruce Willis said it wasn't a Christmas movie.
Yeah, but the director and the screenwriter said it was.
Who are you gonna listen to?
Directors and screenwriters.
As speaking as a screenwriter and director, both of us.
I know.
Screenwriters and directors. Even D'Souza said it's a Christmas movie.
I know, I did. At the moment I came out of my mouth, I went, "Oh, I hate myself."
You're gonna, yeah. You let me understand. You want all actors to be the smartest people on sets?
No. Have you ever tried to have lunch with them? And I say that as an actor, and that's Mel Brooks quote. But
that's what I'm saying.
We're horrible people with
anyway,
videos.
Christmas movie. But Natasha will return, and we'll be watching a series of female-directed films. I'm super excited.
It's an action film that takes place at Christmas, not a Christmas movie.
Batman Returns. Is Batman Returns a Christmas movie?
That one, I actually would make the argument it is.
Oh boy.
You gotta go. We gotta talk about the 7 Golden Vampires. You gotta go, but you'll come back and maybe we'll have you on our December 18th Christmas year. You know what? This makes me want to do it even more now, Rich. Makes me want to do it even more now for December 18th. Okay. Have a great night, Natasha. Stay out of trouble. We love you.
Talk to you in the AM.
Have a good night, guys. Enjoy the vamps.
Tag.
She's so much trouble. Like we bring her in and she's so much trouble, but she's so much fun, but she's so much trouble. She's trouble. Okay, let's look at some comments before we start our talk. Everybody's defending her too. It's really hilarious. I think this may have been a Miss Everything Months World show. We read that one already. I still think her group should do The Last American Virgin. I would like to see them all cry. It's very much. Wendy Zero says, "Hi guys, hi Wendy."
Evening, Wendy.
Host. Evening. And then Natasha should watch much about doc. Craziness. She may feel different then. I don't know you could get her to watch the doc after this. So I don't. Okay. But we have a movie to talk about tonight.
Yes.
And I think maybe the reason we've put it off so long is like, I don't know.
Well, this is the last vampire movie that Hammer does. Yes. 1974's The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
Yes, Deadly Horrors, Dragon Thrills, the name of tonight's episode, by the way. The first Kung Fu horror spectacular. It's both neither horror, the Kung Fu is not really great, and none of it is spectacular. But we're going to talk about it tonight. So, when you do these deep dives on these things, right? And like, I always say this, there's always like, wouldn't you agree with this, Rich? There's always a story behind production. And once you latch on to any particular story, it becomes, once you start reading all the other things, it's like, oh, that's why that happened. Oh, that's why that happened. Oh, that's why this happened. And it just becomes the thing. And the production here is like the most interesting aspect I found. The movie is directed by, let's see, Roy Ward Baker, right? And Chang Chen also helped, right?
Yeah, Chang Chen directed the second unit. He did a lot of the action stuff. He was a standard Shaw Brothers director. Up until that time, probably best known for like One-Armed Swordsman, Brave Archer, Golden Swallow, which starred Chang Pei Pei, who was in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And he still had a couple of years before his most famous work being The Five Deadly Venoms, which is just a classic of this era of martial arts wuxia films.
Well, and that's the thing. The martial arts films of this era are spectacular. Shaw Brothers are spectacular. And the Hammer films are pretty good up until a certain point. And then
Well, let's take a half step back here. And kind of set the table. Let me set the table here. We're kind of at the end of the Hammer cycle of horror films. Previous year with Satanic Rites of Dracula, Christopher Lee was like, that's it. I'm done. These are terrible anymore. I'm out.
Hangs up his cape.
At the same time, over in Hong Kong, which is still a British protectorate at this point, the Shaw Brothers had, founded their studio in the late 50s, and then through the 60s and into the early 70s, just kind of grew as this giant martial arts factory for films like this.
A mecca
they had like outdoor standing sets of like these villages and stuff like that, similar to like New York Street on the Warner Brothers lot, which was recently plowed into the ground because they wanted to sell it for the fucking real estate value. And
long live Zaslav. Hope he croak.
But about this time, the mid 70s, Shaw Brothers' primacy was starting to be challenged a little bit by an upstart studio called Golden Harvest. Just the year before, in 1973, Golden Harvest came out with a little film called Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. And Bruce, if Bruce Lee hadn't died, he probably would have gone on to make a bunch more movies for Golden Harvest, and they would have, knocked the Shaw Brothers off their perch faster than they eventually would. I don't think I don't think Golden Harvest really hit their stride until about 1980, when John Woo directs Last Hurrah for Chivalry, and Jackie Chan comes out with The Young Master. And those two films kind of like really solidify what a lot of Golden Harvest does going through the 80s and into the 90s. And then in 81, 82, whatever it was, they do a co-production in the US of a little movie called Cannonball Run. And that's why Jackie Chan is in that movie playing a Japanese guy. But anyways, so these are two studios that are kind of like embattled at this point. Hammer's kind of on their way down. Shaw Brothers are trying to fight to keep their positioning.
They're making their water.
They're like,
they're just trying to make water.
Let's kind of team up and pool both our resources here. You guys have these great, this great background in making vampire films. We want to make a vampire film, but we also kind of want to do it as partly a period piece using all our things.
Sets.
And
as a true co-production.
Yeah, and boom, it seemed like a match made in heaven. And honestly, I think ultimately the results are middling. I mean, there's a lot of fun in it, but I don't think it's fun in it.
But what I would say, the production stuff I was reading, like there's three things that are kind of like utterly amazing. They get there, and most of the Shaw sets are not exactly in places where you can film movies. They're like they're right next to major cities. So they have a real problem there. The director from Hammer has a real problem there. He also has a real problem in that in Western films, right? Because I want to get into Western Eastern, but in Western films, they do a central shot and then they do the close-ups and not in necessarily any order, right? But when he gets to Hong Kong, the way they shoot is just shooting, and getting everything in order as it happens. And they also do all of their sound mixing and looping over after it's done.
That's because they have so many different markets with so many different languages that it's just easier to shoot the whole thing without sound and then go in, dub your Cantonese and your Mandarin, and then maybe some Thai and Japanese and a couple of other.
I'm not. The way they do it, but the idea when the Hammer group gets there, they have no concept of how the other group works. And they have no concept of how they would work with the other group. So you have, and also almost everybody, in both actors and directors and stunt people and everything, there's a language barrier. They don't have people to interpret. They have very little interpretation going on, and basically no help trying to get over language. So you have a guy over there, a British guy, you have Ward over there, screaming at people. And nobody understanding what's going on in the sets. And so eventually what ends up happening, and while it affects the end result, right? You said middling. I think it's a guilty pleasure movie. I think you could probably, if I was real high or real wasted, I would have enjoyed it way more. But what you have is chunks of the movie that look one way and chunks of the movie that look entirely different. It does, and it's a weird concept.
But what's funny to me is watching, when I sat down to watch it, that, very first scene, it's outside in Transylvania as the old Chinese guy is going to visit. Yes, going to visit Dracula at Dracula's castle. And I'm looking at this going, okay, I've seen a lot of Shaw Brothers movies. I'm sure I've seen this mountain in the background at some point, because this very much feels like this was all, even without knowing it was shot in Hong Kong, it felt this was all shot in Hong Kong to me. Even down to some of the stuff. And I'm wondering is like, who is behind the camera calling the shots on some of these shots? Because you start off with like a close up on an Asian character, and then you have one of those snap pullouts to go wide. And it's like, oh, that was Chang Che. That had to have been Chang Che who did set up that shot, because there's no way a Hammer director would have done something like that. That's strictly a Shaw Brothers style. And
it's just a matter of how they shot things and was able to edit it. And that's the primary gist of the movie is it looks as there are moments, Rich, when you're watching it, and it's like, I don't know, the components look so different. It's like getting a meal. And you order a cheeseburger, and one person knows how to make a cheeseburger, and the other person makes cheeseburgers but does it really differently. and you don't know which cheeseburger you're going to get in any given scene. You know what I mean? And so it becomes like, and this becomes an ongoing thing where, and eventually it gets to the point where the two groups of people that are filming just are filming on their own. So you have the sequences where you have, Peter Cushing interacting with the Asian actors that are in the movie, and those look like Hammer shots. They look like Hammer scenes. The martial arts sequences look like Shaw Brothers scenes.
The shot wider.
They're shot wider. You can see everything, the chaos in the mid. There is like one or two fight sequences that are really good. There's a bat cave sequence that's really amazing. But like one of the things that never gets talked about in production.
Let me kind of just stop you there for a sec. How many Shaw Brothers movies do you think you've seen? Do you have any kind of?
I've seen about, I'd say 5.
Okay.
They're not. It's probably a hole for me. Like, we talk every once in a while about the holes that we have.
You're saying, that fight scene in the cave was pretty good. And by this movie's standards, yes. I would say if that fight scene had shown up in the middle of 36 Chamber of Shaolin, Executioners from Shaolin.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying it in the version of this movie. Like if you're watching this movie looking for something, like you can look for humor, you can look for the chaotic nature of that fight sequence is not. That's what I was saying earlier. It's not. It's not a good Hammer movie. It's not a good Shaw Brothers movie, and together, it's not a good movie for either one of the companies. But there are joys to be had in it, and there are places where I wish they had done more. But we'll talk about that. One of the things that pushes Christopher Lee off, that he reads the script and goes, "The script is trash." Also, Dracula is not used in this script, so it's like Dracula becomes through some sort of confluence of weird decisions. Dracula never is really Dracula until the first sequence and the end sequence. So they take this script to Christopher Lee and he goes, no. And he actually goes to Peter Cushing and says, please don't do this. It's beneath you. And Peter Cushing, who again, we had gone over this when we talked about Horror Express, Peter Cushing is reeling from the death of his wife. And he basically says to Christopher Lee, I'm going to do it because I'm going to get paid, but I'm also going to do it because I want to take a trip. I want to go somewhere different. I want to get out of the house. I want to be away from my sadness, and I'm going to get a paid trip to Hong Kong. And so he does it. But I just think the production is doomed because you have too many cooks in the kitchen, and nobody can take control of it because neither one understands the language of the other one. And that's the story of the production. The story of the production is this two companies that come together and say, hey, we're going to make a cool movie together. And they don't have any of the infrastructure to be able to pull it off.
The gears just don't mesh.
The gears don't mesh. The clock doesn't work. And so it becomes the story of the production. Like, I mean, the quotes you get from Roy Ward Baker on this movie are he is just brutal. The whole setup was slipshod. Nobody knew what anyone was doing. A failure, an absolute failure. And then one of the people speaking for it is like, it wasn't a great idea mixing our two companies, but some of the film is quite good. And that's the truth. Some of it is like I said, I told you earlier when we were discussing earlier, I think the most fascinating thing for me is there are pieces of dialogue in the script where I'm like, I want that. That's what I want. There's a fascinating moment in the screenplay where Cushing is describing, well, this is how vampires act in Victorian England. I don't know how they act here. But because Cushing is wearing a pit helmet and could care less because he's a British colonialist by the way that he's set up in this movie, he basically says, I don't know what it is here yet. I don't know. Well, we're going to have to see. And it's like, it could have something to do with Buddha, but I'm not sure. And we've already seen that it does have to do with Buddha. So it would have been fascinating that the idea that the Buddhist God and the crucifix, the Buddha and the crucifix are equal in vampire world would have been fascinating. But they missed the boat on that. And it's all production. The screenplay is good enough.
Kind of touch on it briefly, but they don't explore it in any kind of thing or utilize it once we see it happen once.
Yeah. And we know it. We know it does. Like, because the one vampire loses his bat. But that's production side of things. It opens. This is gonna be a real short segment.
Well, before we hit that though, we do have to note that there's 2 edits of this film.
There is.
Yeah, the U.S. edit basically chops out about 20 minutes and reuses some footage, like to extend the fight scenes and stuff like that. The U.S. version is only about 71 minutes or something like that, and the longer version is closer to an hour and a half. And that's the version I sent to you, JW. I was like, we're not even going to look at the U.S. version because it's so pared down. It's not worth discussing.
The 1 hour and 29-minute version is the version that's most widely applicable and can be found. You can find it. You can find it on YouTube. Rich sent me a copy. Was very kind. But even in 129 hour and 29 minutes, there are sequences that go on forever, and it's one of those movies where you just like sitting there and you're like, it needed a through line. It needed somebody to mesh everything. Like you said, I think that's a great thing. What you just said, the gears don't mesh. This is going to be a real short segment right now. Box office. You can look up numbers all you want. You're not going to find them. It releases in Hong Kong. It releases in London. It gets distributed by Columbia and Warner Brothers in the United Kingdom, and then American version, which again Rich was talking about, goes 71 minutes. It premieres in the United States in November 1975 at the famous Monsters of Filmland convention in New York, which has Michael Carreras and Peter Cushing in attendance. And it receives wider distribution in the States like around 79, which is perfect because there's a lot of, and you brought this up to me when you sent it to me, there's a lot of boobage in this movie, which is, again, for the time, the 75-minute running time also gets retitled The Seven Brothers Meet Dracula.
Which is a terrible title.
I think you get The Seven Brothers Meets Dracula because Dracula's not in the title and Dracula's in the movie. And to be honest, if you're doing a vampire movie and you have Dracula in it, Dracula should be in the title somewhere. And I think and the Seven Brothers thing, I didn't realize, like when I was reading the stuff before I watched the movie, I didn't realize the Seven Brothers are actually the good group and not the 7 golden vampires. Until I realized there's 7 of the brothers and 7. I didn't realize that till today. I was today years old when I learned that. So basically, they changed the title up to make it more Dracula heavy, which is interesting because, as I've stated, Dracula's not in the goddamn movie that much. So it was not a big hit at the box office. They were going to try to do a Bollywood movie afterwards called Devil Bride of Dracula, which was to be filmed in India, but the Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires ends any dream of that happening. So the box office is minuscule, and when I look it up, we have a by the numbers that we do, right? The only thing that it mentions is the Blu-ray success that it has had when it came out on Blu-ray. It's grossed about $85,000 on Blu-ray, which you don't think a lot about it, but that's a decent sum. That's a decent amount of discs sold.
Yeah, this is not a movie that's had a lot of home video releases. So, you know, when it did come out on Blu-ray, it was kind of a big deal. It had both edits of the film on there. And also, this is a movie, I think, for, you know, wuxia film fans. You know, it crosses over with horror fans a little bit, who are especially Hammer fans. So there is that, you know, Venn diagram overlap there for people. And, you know, maybe even it's a gateway for a horror fan to discover more Shaw Brothers films, or a Shaw Brothers fan to go, oh, I want to check out more of these Hammer horror films. Hopefully they're better.
Well, you know, it's weird. It doesn't like. It is a weird case where you have very little. There's very little. People know about the movie. Like that. That's the most interesting thing I can tell you is that when you're talking about it, people know about it, but they may not have necessarily seen it, or they may not know exactly what it's about or anything like that. But they know it's one of it's Shaw Brothers and Hammer horror, right? And I think the interesting thing with the box office is like very few films we have on our show have no box office at all. That you can redeem, that you can actually like, because every movie gets some sort of like, even movies that only gross like $1 million at the box office or $1,000 at the box office, something gets written down somewhere, but not this movie. So, critical response now and then, there wasn't a lot of a critical response then. It does get released, and that's where you'll find all the critical response gets released on Blu-ray or DVD in 2003. And that's where you find a lot of the critical response. It's at 50% on the tomato meter. It's at 43% of the audience score. So it is how do I say this? It's a novelty, right? It's a novelty where you sit back and you look at it and you go, I think as somebody who I know how much you love martial arts films, and I know how much I love horror films. And for us, it's very much like the chocolate and peanut butter debate. Like, your peanut butter is in my chocolate. Your chocolate's in my peanut butter. And we desperately would have liked to have a Reese's cup out of this movie.
Yes.
But it's not. It's just...
I think it's an interesting thing, because this was, like I said before at the top of the show, this is the last vampire movie that Hammer would do. So it's kind of an interesting coda to this run that Hammer was doing.
High of highs, low of lows.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, Christopher Lee wanted nothing to do with it. I think in reviewing the movie and looking at it, right, I feel, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think if you're drunk or with friends or high, you can make fun of it and do like your own little Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing. I think one of the most interesting things for me is there's so much that could have been done, Rich. From a martial arts standpoint, yes, but from a Hammer standpoint, yes. Can you imagine, like, I can, in my mind's eye, imagine Christopher Lee in Chinese garb, in Hong Kong garb, not the Ka thing. You know what I mean? I can imagine it in my head. I can imagine the fights and the fights being better. And I can imagine, like, there's so many things I can imagine.
There are, you know, I don't want to say this is a complete piece of crap. There are some really interesting things in here. I was very surprised that they kind of went with, during the one vampire attack, Julie Eg gets, you know, her character gets bitten and turned, and almost immediately goes after her character's love interest. And then he you know, throws her on a pointing bamboo shoot, you know, so it's a wooden stake through her heart. And he's so heartbroken about it, he continues to pull a stake through his own heart and dies.
Oh no, I thought it was because he was bitten.
Well, No. Well, she had started to bite him, so he kind of makes that sacrifice too. But he's all, it's mostly heartbreak. I thought that was a really interesting thing. We have the 7 brothers who are escorting Peter Cushing and his party across.
Super cool. You know what? Super cool. Love the brothers. Love that they all have their own weapon, sister. And they're perfect action figures for me. They would be
sister
perfect.
Was awesome too. Coming in there and just kicking some ass.
Well, her first moment on camera, Rich. Her first moment on camera where she's got one knife in her hand and she flicks it out. She's got 2. It's like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Like there's some really interesting, like the one set of brothers that fights together. They have their hands clasped at all times, and they're kind of doing like a whirling dervish. There are some like really cool things that never get fleshed out. Like, again, going back to what I was saying, there's a Cushing moment where he's discussing how vampirism has been in Victorian England and how it's transferred all throughout Europe and how he's fought all these different vampires. And there's a really cool something to be had there about religion and how religion faces off against vampires throughout the world. And it never comes to pass. It never gets past that moment of that little thing where he's literally eating udon while he's talking and doing it. And it never gets past that, like,
well, didn't 2 weeks ago we mentioned something, we talked a little bit about it's the power of the faith behind the symbol, not the symbol itself.
Yes.
So that's an idea that's being replayed here, which is cool.
Well, and Cushing, and I will say this, Cushing, aside from looking mostly uncomfortable going up hills, Cushing is really great in the scenes he's in. And he's giving the actors, the Asian actors with him, everything he has. You know what I mean? Like, he's giving them, it's not a phone-in performance. I don't ever want anybody to think Peter Cushing is just taking Adam Sandler money, where he's doing like an Adam Sandler phone-in, I got a free trip money. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because Cushing is actually really great. I think it's one of those, like, I would have liked the different design of the vampires. I like the makeup, but I would have liked the different design. Like, I would have liked them to look pretty. Because I was thinking 7 golden vampires, you get there and it's like they have gold masks and they're hideous. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay. And
I like the makeup underneath the vampires. I thought that was interesting. It doesn't jive with European vampire lore at all.
No, that's true.
But I like the idea that they're still undead and there's still a connection to, Mr. Dracula. And even though that, they are, more decaying, they also have like their army of undead servants who, pretty much will, fall apart or run away the second they're killed.
I think that
I knew more about the actual lore that the script is playing with here, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's another side note. Like, there are interesting concepts that are not in other vampire movies that they don't fully explain. That if they had fully explained them, maybe they become regular portions of vampire movies. Like the idea that you can call the undead. Because there's a moment where, Ka's banging on the gong. He does it several times, actually. And all these people rise out of the graves. It's, perfect in the 70s.
Oh, and it's so creepy. That's a great sequence. Thank you for bringing that up. Them rising up out of the dirt and the foliage and stuff falling away from them as they're coming up. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, there's one that's in like
maybe my favorite.
There's one that's in like a decorative egg kind of thing, like a sarcophagus that's like an egg, and they have a great moment of it breaking out of the egg and just kind of. But it's really, there are some funny moments with those guys, the undead army, because the undead army clearly can't see, so when they're shuffling down the hill, they're doing like a little dance down the hill. But I don't hate the movie. I think it's one of those things where it's a novelty. It's something like, I can now put it up on my list that I've seen it, and
Mhm.
I can now put it up on my list. Now, I think the other side of it is, Rich, and this is where we get to our, our last thing. I think there's some legacy stuff going on. You have to believe, I have to believe anyway, that the makers of Blade and the makers of Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, there's something there that where I saw it, like the idea, like I was watching it today and I kept on thinking of Army of Darkness because there's a I don't want to say there's a cheapness to it, but there's a budgeting filmmaking to it that's very Army of Darkness and very like even down to the people fly like running in and just fighting and then leaving. You know what I mean? Like the Deadites a little bit. And I think
Mhm.
a Blade franchise owes a lot to this movie. The idea that you could have not the Blade movie, I think it was a lot to it because there's a lot of like the silver swords and the idea that all of his weaponry is silver encased and the weaponry here is silver encased. So maybe somewhere, the legacy of it is that it allowed a movie like Blade to get made, and maybe, incorporating the two different things. We're gonna have a martial artist who happens to be a vampire hunter, while he, even though he's in the comic books, you know what I mean? But the
Yeah.
idea that the movie, like, there are similarities to it, where, you know, obviously we're, in the '90s when they make Blade, the martial arts and the filmmaking is a little bit better, but it's
Let
it's
me
it's
ask you this.
something there.
This is me just thinking off the top of my head. In most of these vampire movies we've watched so far, and I'm trying to think going all the way back, we always see them, with their human face, and then they'll go, "Ah," and then we see the fangs. But we don't see too much additional makeup on that outside of like the original Nosferatu, the German silent film. When we see a vampire, they're always very human in appearance, and then the teeth. Is this one of the first times we've seen a vampire not look just like human, human with the extra
Yeah, the
canine?
Dracula. Yeah, he looks really dead. He's
Mhm.
got blue. The only another thing I was going to bring up for Legacy, like the only thing that I think it's one of the first times you see it.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's there some places. Like I think if you look at like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and things like where when they when they fang out, they have a whole thing go on where
Yeah,
they have like Klingon
everything
brows.
does. Yeah, it's very much we are possessed by this is a body possessed by a demon kind of a thing.
Yes. But I think you're right. It's the first time in the Hammer films where it's not like this is the first movie where they actually do the hissing, like and then the teeth come down. Like when she
Mhm.
changes, her teeth come down in like a funky way, and it just and then she's laughing as it's happening, so it's like it's not painful apparently. And so it's just this weird moment. But I think you're right. I think for the most part, the subtlety and the idea of vampire makeup over the course of film history has changed. Like, and now to the point where we have like the pharaoh vampire design, and we have like everything's kind of like changed off. You know what I mean? But it's a great play. It's a great question to ask because I think this is one of those movies where it's a hybrid that you really want to be better than the sum of its parts, and it just part of it, Rich, is the Dracula. The Dracula's completely lame. It's not Christopher Lee. He's really, really not Christopher Lee. Like there's nothing cool about him at all.
That's
He's
true.
just
Yeah.
he's a really tall dude. And you know, it's the last time Dracula is portrayed on, John Forbes-Robertson. And he had so many, like, there were so many things behind the scenes for him where he found out he got dubbed and was freaking out. He found out he wasn't the first choice. The idea that he wasn't the first choice, like, buddy, this company's worked with Christopher Lee for the last 20 years. Why are you upset that you're not the first choice to play Dracula, buddy? You were never the first choice. So
should have been kind of obvious.
Like, but I think the franchise viability is interesting because I think we get a bunch of really good martial arts films, and eventually, although I don't know, I haven't seen any where they've gotten them like.
Well,
I'll give you an example of something where like I don't know that there are many that have the monster component to it, but like something like a movie that springs out of this movie is Big Trouble in Little China. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where you have the martial arts.
Big Trouble in Little China is a complete love letter to a lot of Shaw Brothers stuff. We could probably do a series of 5 or 6 episodes where I just go, okay, and now we're gonna look at this movie, which is this from Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, well, and but like the idea that there's not a franchise viability with this movie. It's more the legacy of the kids that see, like, oh, I want to make a vampire movie, and I want it to have martial arts. Like the people who saw this movie and continue to watch this movie and love this movie for what it is its legacy. It's not necessarily.
Well, think about it this way, though. If this had been successful, Hammer wanted to do another Dracula film, vampire film, but set in India. And I could see a globe-trotting, Van Helsing, played by Peter Cushing, going around to various countries and dealing with their individual vampire lore. I think would be kind of interesting. It
would have been amazing.
Scandinavia, where you have 6 months of night, 6 months of day. You were right in the middle of the blaxploitation craze. Go to Africa and find what kind of vampire-ish lore they have there and make a movie out of that.
Yeah,
you could probably outside of Blackula, Blackula.
Well, and that's the key though. Part of the
further with that, it would be interesting.
Right.
I think
part of the problem though, it would have been great. I totally agree with you. And Cushing is engaged. Like that's the other sad part about the movie to me, is that Cushing is engaged. It's not like a movie where he's just kind of hanging out. Like he looks like he's having fun in the scenes with the Asian actors. He looks like he's really like happy, like you know what I mean? Like he's engaged. So I think you're right.
I think he's excited by the fact that they're trying to do something different with the formula. I think that's kind of energized him. And it just didn't energize audiences when it's showing up, though.
Well, and the other side of it is, you're right. I think they probably could have had a franchise out of it. Like, the idea of a globe-trotting Van Helsing sounds amazing. Do you know what I mean? Like, with different lore from all these different places, and just like, oh, well, in this place it's not Buddha. This place it's this place it's Vishnu. You know what I mean? Like, the idea, the Shankara stones, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it,
yeah.
But the idea that it could have really been something interesting. But part of the problem is in this original movie, Rich, they just have a glancing blow of what's really interesting at the heart of the movie. And what's really interesting at the heart of the movie is Van Helsing not knowing what he's getting into, and Van Helsing bringing 2 other people with him when he doesn't know what he's getting into, and the idea that he doesn't know what will work on the vampires here, and also that he doesn't know that Dracula's made the move. Right? That's the most interesting thing. Like, there is a sequence in the movie after the 7 golden vampires have been vanquished, where everybody kind of leaves, and Van Helsing it's a great acting moment from Peter Cushing. He doesn't talk, but I loved it so much where he puts his hand on the back of his neck, like the hair is rising on the back of his neck, like, I know that motherfucker's here somewhere.
My only problem with that scene, it's a well done scene between the 2 of them. My only problem is everybody else goes outside and just hangs out and is waiting, and no one thought to stick their head back in and go, hey, oh shit. Yeah. Then
oh my God, Dracula's here. Holy fuck. And then it just ends. Like, that's the other thing. It doesn't like I would have, you know what I would have also liked? This is going to sound stupid, but the spear that kills Dracula, I was thinking at the end of the movie, for franchise viability, the tip of the spear that killed Dracula would be one of the coolest weapons any monster hunter could ever acquire, right? So I really would have liked Von Helsing to go in at the end and just kind of pick it up, like, finally got the bastard. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But
Well,
alas,
but these films were never big on denouements, anyways. It's like,
no, they weren't.
oh,
They just
that guy's
they
dead. We're done. Out.
We're done. We're out.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, I think there is a lot to love, but there's also like part of it for me becomes like, oh, what could have been. You know what I mean? And then,
oh, very much so.
As we progress, as you get into like legacy, and you know, I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think Blade, I think all of these movies owe it that you could have fighting elements within these framework of a vampire, like, because usually vampire is like hunting and stab with the stick. I think this is probably the gateway where you basically said we can have fight sequences, we can have elaborate fight sequences with many vampires fighting Blade, or many vampires fighting Buffy, or many vampires like in a fighting setting like 30 Days a Night or whatever, and take it on a different plane. And I think this is probably a movie where I would bet that a lot of the people that are working in horror have at least seen it. And it's the kind of movie where it's not necessarily their favorite, but it is something they've watched, and they've watched friends, and they saw it and they were like fascinated with makeup. And that's, I think, you know, it's the
inspiration it's given to other filmmakers is probably its most lasting legacy.
Yes.
So,
but the legacy we have is that we have 6 episodes left in 2023.
That's right.
6. So before we announce what we're starting with in our Thanksgiving Christmas mashup, 6 episodes with maybe movies you've seen, maybe movies you love, maybe movies you don't love. We're gonna get them to you. We have our Thanksgiving movies up first. Rich, where can people find you and your stuff and your writing? Because it's always amazing, and also it's a busy time of year for you because we're getting towards award season. So where can they find reviews and things?
All of my writing is at FilmBuffOnline.com. You can also hear the other podcasts that I do with our special guest talking head this evening,
she's a
Natasha.
Pest, Rich. She's a pest.
No, she's not.
She's so much fun. I'm just
it's called the Big Picture Podcast, and we don't have a new episode this week, but the episode that dropped last week was our the last of our Halloween episodes, where we talked about both versions of Fright Night and what we liked in one and what we liked in the other. That can be found at thebigpicturepod.com. I am on the socials on Twitter and Blue Sky at FilmBuffRich, and you can find Film Buff Online on Facebook just by searching Film Buff Online, where we also have sometimes a little news flashes in addition to links to all of our material on the main site, as well as some other history posts, things like that. So
yeah, Bill Gadabakis is on fire finding streaming movies. He had Nimona. He had
Bill has
he's on a kick right now. He's on
a series that he's doing right now. My friend Bill, who writes for the site, it's called We Found It on Streaming, and mostly they're films he likes. Sometimes there's a film he'll come across that seems interesting and turns out to be crap.
But he's on a heater. He's actually gotten like 3 or 4 in a row, which they're pretty great movies.
It's technically it's a bi-weekly feature. He went weekly during Halloween, through October, and he's going to go weekly again in December for Christmas movies. I've read a couple of the articles. He has like 8 stacked up in our to be published queue on the site. So he's got a lot of stuff. Is great, some great reviews coming up for those. Those always drop on a Friday. But he's been on a heater. One day a week out of the, check in on a Friday to see that. I will be rerunning, I know that later on this week, my review of The Holdovers, the new Alexander Payne film.
I'm still looking forward to that movie.
Fantastic. With I was raving about it, 2 weeks ago here, I'm sure.
I can't wait because it feels like they don't make them like they used to movie, and then it is one of them. Is what it feels. I don't know yet. I don't know what it is yet.
Very much so. I can't wait to go back and see it again if I have time when it comes out. It's a career best performance from Paul Giamatti,
which is saying a lot because he's good in a lot.
Because he's always great. Yes,
he's always great. Yeah. You can find me, JW Movie, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Blue Sky with Rich, and on Instagram and all those places. I have a little show called Loud Nerdy. Loud Nerdy will be making the jump this week to the Indie Escape Network. We start tomorrow night, 8 p.m. November 7th, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we will be discussing a bunch of things, finishing up our spooky season stuff. I'll be joined by Jerry Kimura. We will not be joined by Kyle tomorrow night, but we'll have a couple other, maybe one or two other people on. I've been trying to scout and recruit people to bring back some of the best things that we used to do on the show way back when for the first inaugural show. But we're super excited about it. I will be going over. I didn't make it. I'm disappointed in myself, but I couldn't help it. We were on a cruise and stuff, and we had like Halloween and everything. But I did 25 movies, 25 hours worth of movies, or 25 movies worth of movies out of 31 days in October. So I have a ton of stuff to talk about tomorrow night. So that's going to be a big portion tomorrow night. What I really enjoyed, I saw a movie called Cobweb that nobody was talking about, and everybody should have been talking about. It's really great. It's got a bunch of people in it, and it's one of the creepiest fucking movies I've seen all year. And a bunch of other things, and we're going to be talking about those tomorrow night. I'm super excited about that. And with this, I will announce that we have our first 3 movies that we will be doing in successive weeks. So the 13th, we will be doing Thanksgiving themed movies for the rest of the month of November. We finished with the spooky season. First movie we're doing this great movie from the 90s, Pieces of April. Katie Holmes, Patricia Clarkson, Sean Hayes, Oliver Platt, Derek Luke. It's a fantastic Thanksgiving movie. It is a fantastic performance from Katie Holmes. It is a great family movie, right? And it's just, it is the epitome of what we want to do for Thanksgiving films. The second movie we're doing for Thanksgiving is my favorite Thanksgiving movie ever made. We are doing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with the amazing Steve Martin and the iconic, legendary John Candy, the John Hughes film that basically is about the terrors of travel, and it's easily one of the most. I think it's one of the most heartfelt comedies ever made. I think there's so much funny material that you repeat and repeat and repeat. But the key to the movie is that it's got an elephant-sized heart in the form of Steve Martin and John Candy.
Oh yeah,
are top class. The comedy is hilarious, but it's got a big heart. And then the last movie we're going to roll our dice. It's a movie Rich and I, neither one of us has ever seen, but we've heard a lot of good things about Alice's Restaurant, which is Arlo Guthrie, of course, based on the Arlo Guthrie Alice's Restaurant song. But it is a Thanksgiving movie. It deals with somebody traveling across the country to open up a restaurant the day after Thanksgiving. We're in. We're all in on this one.
Directed by the great Arthur Penn.
Yeah, it's got nothing but glowing plaudits about it, and we're excited to bring it as part of our Thanksgiving, feast movies this year. But Pieces of April, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Alice's Restaurant. That's November. December, we're not fully done with yet, but we will have. And maybe, you know what, Natasha might have sealed the deal. We might do Die Hard. I might do Die Hard just to have her on so we could talk about it. But that's what we got going. 6 episodes left in the year. Thank you for joining us tonight. Last 2 comments of the night. From Dusk Till Dawn had the best looking vampires. Yeah, Selma Hayek in half clothed is a pretty good looking vampire.
Oof.
Quentin Tarantino, not so much. Joe Ridgely, woohoo! I think that's for both Loud and Nerdy and for maybe the rest of the shows of the rest of the season. Planes, Trains, and Auto is getting a remake. I think that's a fucking mistake. Just re-release Planes, Trains, and Automobile, or just that's a mistake. If that's I don't know that that's real. If that's real, and those are awful big shoes to fill, and I'm not talking about Steve Martin's. Because
that might be a case of, hey, maybe we should do this, and it never gets beyond that stage. So hopefully,
hey, we can remake this. Okay, we shouldn't, and then they magically go away. But again, if it is getting remade, I think it's pretty cool that Rich and I came up with the idea of doing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for Generation Movie without even knowing that fact. That's just because we're ahead of the curve. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week for Pieces of April with Katie Holmes. Have a great week. Go see a movie. Marvels this week. We will be doing a Loud Nerdy tomorrow night, and we will have a review for the Marvels on Friday at 4:30. We're changing up our time there. 4:30 Eastern. Yes, we're gonna try to get in there and do it a little bit a different time. I have to work around my busy Friday schedule, which is nothing. But I need to leave some time for something. So have a great night. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe. Go watch a movie. Bye.
Thanks again. Bye.